One.
Hi, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the Artist Lab in the Studio series. My name is Maestrxs Atelier. I'm the Director of Artistic Programs and Education at Self-Help Graphics and Art. The Artist Lab supports and promotes artists of color and seeks to maintain the creative community connected. We begin by acknowledging that Self-Help Graphics resides in Apachagna, currently known as the Los Angeles neighborhood of Boyle Heights, where the original peoples of this territory, the Tongva, Chumash, and Tataviam, were first displaced. I'm excited to welcome 7 talented artists who were part of the 5th iteration of the Maestrxs Atelier. Artist Rosalie Lopez curated the atelier with the guidance and mentorship of Irena Cervantes, who curated its first iteration in 1999. As with this current project, the first iteration of the Maestrxs brought together an intergenerational group of women artists to have both seasoned and new printmakers support each other through a creative process. Additionally, this iteration of Maestrxs Atelier now uses an X to be more inclusive of the many genders and gender non-conforming identities in our community. Guided by the founding mission of Self-Help Graphics Professional Printmaking Program, Rosalie set a platform that allowed collaboration, mentorship, and experimentation. At the first group meeting, Irena gave a historical narrative about the first atelier, while Rosalie provided a layout of what the artist would expect and shared her comprehensive knowledge of the medium through a PowerPoint demonstration, demonstrating different approaches to serigraphy. This gathering led to a second meeting on about the registration process, opening the communication paths between artists with some familiarity in serigraphy to someone like Rosalie, or also Irena with her knowledge as well. It's crucial to mention that because of COVID, a year passed from first meeting, which was in December 2019, until the very first artist printed in 2021, in February of 2021. There's no doubt that the pandemic, the events of last year that continue to today, and in the individual's personal experiences all contributed to the topic addressed in this series. Tonight we will meet the artist, the master printer, and discuss the works in this portfolio. I'll begin by introducing each one, each artist as well as the master printer in no particular order. We have Rosalie Lopez. She's a Chicana artist from Argentina who combines and reforms her traditional art practices through her contemporary lens. Her artwork shares impactful communal stories of resiliency and pride happening within the underrepresented facets of society. She blends printmaking and papel picado techniques combined with offerings for the Day of the Dead and religious kitsch to create her artwork. Lopez's artwork often takes the form of immersive installations, sculpture, social engagement projects, and Lopez was the first in her family to graduate high school and attend college. In 2009, she earned her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in graphic design and printmaking from Cal State Long Beach. In 2013, she earned her master's in printmaking from Indiana University. She has been exhibiting in various museums across the California as well as in Texas, and in a solo show in Tipton Gallery at East Tennessee State University. I also want to welcome Irena Ortiz, who received her BA in art at the University of Cal State LA and an MFA in photography at California Institute of the Arts. Utilizing documentary landscape and portrait photography, she focuses on the intersections between urban structure, familial relationships, mental illness, drug addiction, and immigration. For years, her art has been a direct response to personal struggles and familial hardships. Most would shy away from making the private so public, but Ortiz has found that through the art making process, she can channel her negative energy into shared conversation. Ortiz has exhibited her artwork internationally, most notably at Pomona College Museum at Claremont and the Museum of Latin American Art in Long Beach. where she's now part of the permanent collection. I also want to welcome Gabriela Sanchez. Her work explores the duality of identity. Explores how the duality of identity gets concretized in and by contemporary culture. The Mexican American, us and them, the personal and the social cultural. Sorry about that. Sanchez prompts the audience to reconsider the vantage point from where they are observing, as Americans, as cultural consumers, as members of ethnic groups, as singular individuals. Her compositional collage paintings operate like vibrant, sprawling puzzles, seemingly disparate elements of all existing on the same plane. Pieces composed of type, form, and color. A nod to Sanchez's background in graphic design. Gabriela was born in Pasadena and received her BFA in 2011 from PLNU in San Diego. And then we have Irena Cervantes, who is a Chicana artist born in Gardena City, Kansas, but grew up in San Diego, near San Diego. She's an American painter, printmaker, muralist, and teacher. She received her BA in Fine Arts from the University of California, Santa Cruz, and later went on to earn her master's from the University of Cal State LA. UCLA. Sorry, what am I saying? I'm sorry about that. UCLA in 1989. She is currently the multicultural coordinator at the, this is an older bio, my apologies. But she is now retired professor where she was Chicano and Chicana Studies at California State University of Northridge. Drawing heavily from her cultural heritage, Irena Cervantes has become prominent and well-respected amongst other Chicana and Chicana artists. She's particularly known for her various self-portraits of Chicana identity, as well as murals that depict struggles within the Chicano movement. Some of her favorite artwork includes La Ofrenda, Homenaje a Frida Kahlo, and Irena has been part of the self-help graphics community for, over about 30 plus years. Let's see. Yaneli Delgado is a Mexican-American born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. She graduated from Thomas Jefferson High School and 4 years later graduated from UC Santa Barbara with a double major in sociology and Spanish. Nelly moved back to South Central LA and wanted to be a resource to students in the community. While she continued to work at her former high school and Nova College Prep Academy, she was inspired to go back to school. Delgado found her interest in printmaking, and she just completed her degree in printmaking at Cal State Long Beach. Many African American, Chicano, and Latin American muralists and printmakers have influenced her work. She believes in printing press can be a powerful tool for the artist, as he or she can send a powerful message with a touch of ink. And we have Nani Chacon from Albuquerque, joining us from Albuquerque. She began as a graffiti artist at 16 and continued her work for the next 10 years. With the birth of her son, she began exploring other mediums, including painting. Occasionally, Nani has returned to painting murals such as the International ISEA Arts and Technology Symposium in Albuquerque and for the Navajo Nation Museum in Window Rock, Arizona. Through the female archetypes in her work, she explores the idea of feminism, cultural traditions, and modernism, evoking dialogue between culture and contemporary social perspective. And we have Star Montana. She's a photo-based artist who lives and works in Los Angeles. She was born and raised in Boyle Heights, neighborhood of Boyle Heights, and also in East Los Angeles. Her work has recently been exhibited at Charlie James Gallery, Residency Gallery, and La Plaza de las Culturas y Artes. She holds, Montana will be, Star was an artist in residence at the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation in 2020, and she holds a Master's of Fine Arts at the University of Southern California and a BFA in photography from the School of Visual Arts and Associate Arts in Photography from East Los Angeles College. And last but not least, we have Dewey Tafoya joining us, our master printer. Dewey Tafoya is an East Los Angeles-based visual artist and teaching artist. He is currently the resident artist of self-help graphics and, a master printer of self-help graphics and art. And he also will hopefully be leading monthly workshops again as we reopen. As a printmaker and graphic design instructor, he has taught local continuation schools as well as Artworks LA and City of Los Angeles Night Lights and Parks and Recreation program. His work has exhibited through the Southern California, including the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. And finally, thank you everyone for joining us. We'll begin. I guess I think that it's really important to emphasize how the work was, the process of the print or the atelier took so long, and everything that happened in between. Like I mentioned, our first meeting was in 2019, and then we printed in 2021. But before we go on into the conversation, I would like to invite Irena to give us a synopsis of the atelier in 1999 and the artists that participated and the themes that the artist addressed.
Okay, very good. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Marvella. I'm really honored to be here tonight with all the other artists. It's been a really wonderful experience working in the Maestrxs Atelier, and so thank you to everybody, and especially to everybody, and especially to Dewey and Gabriela in the studio. Well, self-help graphics, I first started my association with self-help graphics around 1978 when I started attending some of the Days of the Dead events, but I started working at self-help around 1980. And on various capacities, I was an artist in residence and, different projects, Body of Mobile Arts van, different things. But in 1983, Sister Karen Bocalero wanted to initiate the ateliers. And so the ateliers began in earnest in 1983, although at self-help there had been previously, people that had been doing silkscreen, but the actual ateliers, the official ateliers started in 1983. So I was fortunate enough to, because I was working in self-help graphics from about 1980 to 1985, 86, I was able to participate in many of the ateliers. And, throughout that period of time, the women that were involved in the ateliers, always from the beginning had expressed a desire to have an atelier just for women, and to express women's voices. So in 1999, I was contacted by Tomas Benitez at that time, and he asked me if I would be interested in curating the first, women's atelier. And I said, yes, definitely. And so it was really a wonderful opportunity because I was able to coordinate and to invite, many of the artists that I had known and that I admired and that I felt would work well together. So the artists in the atelier were actually Laura Alvarez, Barbara Carrasco, Diane Gamboa, Pat Gomez, Margaret Guzman, Yolanda Lopez, Delilah Montoya, Noni Olabisi, Rose Portillo, and Fabiana Rodriguez. And so the whole idea of the ateliers from the beginning, the Maestrxs Ateliers, was the idea of exchange, of mentorship across generations. And also, and when we could, it would be focused on Latina, Latinx, or Chicana, Chicanx artists, but also we invited different artists from other communities of color. So for example, in the first atelier, Noni Olubisi, who's a wonderful and amazing muralist, was part of that atelier. So each atelier has been very different, but the themes that we decided on for the atelier were really open, but there were three, particular themes. It was goddesses, icons, and heroines. The second one was erotica. And then we also had the theme of Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. So we kind of covered it all. So, but I have to tell you that first atelier was very powerful. You can imagine with some of these artists, some that had never had experience with serigraphy, and some that had. Of course, all of them were really amazing artists, and so they brought to the table different levels of experience in different areas, and so there were so many positive transformations, I'll say, and impacts, I think, in terms of self-help graphics, as well as a positive impact that this particular atelier made. And so it was just really an honor to work with the women, to be able to meet. We met frequently, with the idea again was mentorship, and to exchange ideas of not just content, but technique, and of course even life experience in terms of what it meant to be a Chicana or Latina artist, or a woman, an artist of color. So anyhow, it was just it was very powerful. And so I know that each atelier after Barbara Carrasco curated an atelier, Diane Gamboa, Yolanda, Yolanda Gonzalez, and also Dalila Paula Mendez. And so each atelier has been very, very, I think, successful and very powerful. And I think the main thing is that it really has afforded us an opportunity to have that exchange, to get to know each other a little bit better, and to really understand that process of what it means to be an artist and to be a printmaker.
Thank you, Irena. And Rosalie, we met with Irena, who shared this story with us, and with this narrative, a historical narrative in mind. How did this conversation with Irena shape your curatorial approach to this atelier?
Well, in a few ways, I think hearing her describe the thematic, the themes that were happening in the first three portfolios was inspirational, and how she decided to select artists that she was aware of and admiring at the time, and also of various experiences and generations, and where they were in their art careers. So I think like all of those variances were things that I drew from Irena specifically in curating this. And I feel like with discussions with Irena and also with you, Marbella, we came up with a great grouping for this new version of Maestrxs that we put together for the portfolio. So yeah, I think that with their various experiences with printmaking, or maybe none at all, or experiences with self-help, or not that much yet, and yeah, in various stages in their career. And I think getting them into the studio and being able to print in the studio with Dewey, or having a master printer create a print for them, that experience in creating positives or creating an image in the studio is a unique one, that even if you are a printmaker, maybe you're not as familiar with that process of working and collaborating with a master printer. So I think in selecting the artists that we did, it was all of that was coming into mind and a part of the choices. Yeah.
Thank you, Rosalie. I'm going to show 3 of the prints, Rosalie's, Gabriela, and Ivy. And the 3 of you, when the 3 of you come from different art practices. Ivy, you're a photographer, and Rosalie, prolific printmaker, and Gabriela, you have a background in graphic design, but you're also a painter. I put these works together because there's a common theme within the 3, and they're all an homage to your parents, or to your parents, and or ancestors. So Rosalie, I'll begin with you. Your body of work addresses family history and resilience, and each object usually carries such a deep story. Here, for example, the plants. Can you share how this theme continues in this print? Elaborate more on the plants and just how that theme continues a lot more, and it's so subtle.
Sure. Would it be possible to share screen for a little bit and then kind of go back and forth, or it doesn't work that way?
No, that's fine. If Lulu, I'll stop sharing, and if Lulu, you can make Rosalie a co-host.
All right. So,
yeah, Rosalie.
Okay. So the print I made for the Maestrxs Atelier is called Balancing Growth. And I just want to give it a little context from where it's coming from before, like how I ended up here. I think at first glance, it kind of looks very simple and maybe even decorative elements. So I wanted to go into the symbolism behind it and kind of give you a little bit of background. Okay, so should I be able to do this now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right, so I started off, I'm originally from Gardena, California. Grew up in LA and around the LA area. And I had been away from Los Angeles for maybe about 6 years. And when I came back, I got this LA River grant to complete this idea in the LA riverbed. And my idea was I was heavily into making altars and offerings at the time. And my mom had just passed away. And my sister and I inherited all these plants from my mom. And we were going to be partying, moving to different parts of the United States. And we couldn't bear with getting, not having her plants. So I learned how to propagate and how to clone them, a lot of them, so that we could both have the plants. So here you can see an altar that I made on the LA riverbed. And the idea was to have an homage to her the day before Mother's Day. And I collected people's audio stories about their mother. And I posted them on social media, and it was, people gathered there. I had food and music playing. And really, it was just about people sharing stories about a mother or a woman in their life, someone important. And those audio stories really did show just how wonderful moms, grandmas, aunties, friends, mothers' friends have been in people's lives. And it really just reinforced the strength of women. And it just was an homage piece to my mom. And I used live plants to make the altar right along the bike path in the LA riverbed in a section called Frogtown. So here you can see the altar on the left, and on the right, you can see me recording someone's story. And once they shared a story, I gave them a plant clone from my mom so that they could take home with them. So that memory of sharing their story and being in that moment goes with them. So that later on turned into like what I made here, which was a print I made for Self-Help Graphics. And it was for Day of the Dead in 2019. And it was a print that was taking those plants, the living thing, and making it a memorial piece, and also mixing some of the religious kitsch of the Milagro charms. So here I am mixing self-help graphics history up in the top flower. And then I have this old age hand that represents like the working hand, that is like our grandma's hand, and the heart being right over it. So I mix in some of the other techniques that I'm using, like cut paper and embossing. And in one version of it, it has LED lighting behind it, and it actually flickers. So it has that pulsating heart. And so I'm kind of taking printmaking and trying to combine it with other methods. And then I ended up doing something like this. It goes back into flat with laser cut pieces, and I'm using really old techniques in printmaking with really new. I did this through a couple residencies in Mexico in 2019. Actually, I think the print before was like 2018, if I remember. This one was 2019. And what I did is in Mexico, they got this great print shop called La Ceiba Gráfica, and they do Mexican marble lithography. It's the only print shop that does lithography on Mexican marble. And it's a very old hand-done process, and it's specific to this region. So I wanted to go and work with it. And I wanted to pair it with something that was like new technology. I was thinking ancestors and new generations. So here I was combining the two. I got the hand printed using that old lithography process. And this is also handmade paper from La Ceiba Gráfica in Veracruz. And then I went over to Mexico City and did another residency there in a fab lab where I worked with a couple assistants, and I worked with molding these three-dimensional leaves and laser cutting this background that kind of start to resemble the laser cards, like the prayer cards that you would get like at a funeral. And yeah, I wanted it to be the new generation now, my hand, this younger hand, and now the life that sprouts from it after death. So that's what took me into the new print that you guys saw that I'm doing here with Self-Help Graphics. I'm thinking of balance of the old with the new. I'm thinking of stripping the sort of simplifying things so that it looks a lot more generalized and people can really place a lot more meaning on it to be personal. I think of wrought iron plant holders, and I'd make that this square the triangles that are on top of each other to symbolize the bones and the structure that holds us, the history. And then the plant life is that changing, the ever growing and the imbalance and balance that we try to have in our lives. And then the gold is another throwback to my cultural heritage. And I'm thinking of my Mexican heritage, and thinking of the gold also as the nuggets that our ancestors leave us of knowledge, and having that be at each end, the top on opposing ends, so that they can sort of be reminders for us. So I think of the plants as the flesh, and the black wrought iron as like the skeleton of the piece. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Rosie. I want to note that that's the digital work, that the last slide.
Yeah. I don't have a good documented image of it printed in CMYK, but I know that in that image slide you just showed, it was done in CMYK. So that's the digital rendition of. I was the one person out of the portfolio that completed their work from afar. Yes. So I used a CMYK layering process to make the positives that Dewey could then go and print out. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Rosie. It's such a beautiful work. And I think that it's really great how in such a simple manner, how you just really connect with your mother, and how you continue her honoring her in that way. And so, Lulu, if you can share this slide, I'm going to have Lulu share the PowerPoint, so I don't have to make so much noise with my papers. So the next slide is for with Gabriela. And now I'm losing my place. I'm sorry. Gabriela. So Gabriela, you've described your print as a collaboration per se with your father, who passed away. The images, the text, the symbols all connect with your dad. The title is an acronym also for Sealed with a Kiss, a SWAC, and which he added to an envelope that was mailed to you. And you can clearly see that at the bottom right of the image. Can you share a bit more of one or two symbols in the work, and what propelled you to address such an intimate topic? You had mentioned, I recall, that that's usually not where you tend to go, very personal in the work that you portray.
Yeah, I think, I think this is probably like the most kind of like direct personal reference I've made. But it was really just after this year, it was like, when it came time for this project, I was like, just kind of, where does my energy actually want to go? And I wanted to, I've been working in my other art practice, which is mostly like painting and some like sculptural installation stuff some video. In those materials, I've been doing a lot more collaboration lately. And so for this project, I also was thinking like collaboration and just this year has really been such a time of collective grief, I think. And I think for a lot of us from our communities and other marginalized communities, it's been a lot of facing grief too, because it all kind of is connected generationally too. And so for this project, I took things from just kind of like the bookcase kind of altar area that I have in my studio, where I have a lot of my dad's things. And so in this one, it's stuff that he had sent to me or my family while he was in jail, or stuff that he kept with him. And so one of those things is like this little, it's a drawing on an envelope. I was gonna see if it was right here, but it's a drawing on an envelope that's like laminated now, but it's a drawing of him and on one side, and then like a hole in a brick wall, kind of like with the sun shining behind it, kind of like symbolism of his time there. And that's the main image here that you see in the middle, that's done in graphite and then has the halo around it. And unfortunately, I don't know the original artist who he even had do that for him, because it's not signed or anything. And so that's there. And then layered under that drawing is his harmonica. And then the photos on either side come from a book that he had with him. That was a history of the Mexican American people. And so that's where those other photos come from as well, and the text at the top. And then the letter, the envelope down on the bottom right corner says SWAC on it, which is sealed with a kiss, that is from a birthday card that he sent me. I think when I was like 9 or 10. And that's just like the signature on the back. And yeah, I wanted to make this as an active collaboration, kind of like my own processing of grief, but at the same time also making it a joyful piece, a piece of almost as like a practice of interacting with our loved ones who have passed, and kind of bringing that, sharing that too, because I think that is something that we can do, and that is important for us to do, and is really healing. And it was actually really cool to see that like Rosalie and Irena was, they also did pieces that ended up connecting in a similar way. Yeah.
Do you have siblings, and did you share this image with them?
Yeah, I have a younger sister, and I don't know if she's seen it.
I wonder.
My mom has seen it though.
Oh, and what did she say?
Yeah, my mom and also my aunt, my dad's sister, saw it, and they love it. They like, I mean, they're really supportive. So really everything I do, they're really supportive. But I think work like this helps, does help the family process their own grief as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. 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 Thank you, Gabriela. And now we can switch the slide, please. And so, your work is also a collaboration with your parents. You have your mom's writing and descriptions of the work that both your dad does as well as what she does. And I think that it also kind of this work, when I see this and thinking about what the events of last year, I really also see this as an homage to essential workers. So can you talk about what prompted you to connect your parents' work or line of work to your print?
I think like many of us during the pandemic, I felt really uninspired. And so this is really a reflection of what I was thinking during the time, which it stemmed and started with a conversation about how fortunate I am to be able to work from home. And part of that privilege is the education that I received. And I know that I was able to receive the education that I did because of the hard work, the hustle, right, that my parents had to go through. So this was my way of honoring them. It was a homage to them and their hard work of many years of supporting our family. And yes, I do think that it's also not unique to them because there's a lot of people who are working this hard. And so it was kind of a response to the moment, right? And I wanted it to be a surprise, but then I thought it would be more interesting if I actually had my mom make the sign. I wanted my dad to make the sign too, but honestly, he was like, "Your mom can do it," and I think it worked out really well. I have like little elements within the piece that also represent different people in my family, like the tagging within it, and I wanted to make it seem as if they were promoting their work. Like you would see other people promote their work, whether it's in, in different, let's see, like laundry mats or mercados or things like that, because that's usually how people communicate with each other. I mean, everything's digital now, but yeah, I think that was part of the inspiration.
Yeah. Have your parents seen it?
Yes, my family has seen it. My dad was a little concerned in the beginning. He thought I was making him like a legit flyer. And I'm like, no, Dad, I'm honoring you. So I thought that was really funny and interesting, his interpretation of the work, but I think it was really successful. And a little side note, we had an extra a takeout, I guess, piece that I ended up cutting up and actually stapling to a sign outside of Self-Help Graphics.
Oh my
goodness. It was really nice that Dewey would send me updates of people actually tearing the number. So that was impromptu installation piece, which I really enjoyed. It wasn't the whole thing, it was just, piece. So don't think I put the
No, it's fine. Is that a real number then?
No, my mom made it up. She refused to use a real number. She was a little worried. Now I wish I would have used someone else's number, maybe, that was seeking employment. I didn't think that far ahead. But no, it's a made up number by my mom.
I would like you because Star will talk about her process, but I'd like you to, because your approach with versus Star's approach is very different to the print. Can you share a little bit about that part, because you're a photographer, and how you approach this print?
Yeah, so like Star, I am a photographer and I primarily go to only photography. I do a little bit of installation, but my main medium is photo. But I wanted to take a step away from photo and kind of experiment more with drawing, although I still ended up kind of falling into my old tricks, and I actually printed the sign, took a picture of it, and then I traced it, right? Dewey gave me the awesome tip of telling me that I could trace if I can't draw. So I definitely learned a lot and tried different things with this process. So that's one thing that I really enjoyed, even when I did printmaking back when I was at my community college, was the fact that I could incorporate some of my images in the work. And even though I can't draw, I was still able to, make a print. And while I'm talking about Dewey, I want to give him a shout out. Congratulations for the job. And also Gabby, thank you for helping me make this print. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Heidi. And if we can switch the slides, please. So Star and Nani, when I saw both of your prints and I put them side by side, I automatically think about a specific place, an environment, and culture. Nani, we know that the car culture is big in LA, the lowrider culture in the Chicano, Chicanx, Latinx community. You have a bright, beautiful cherry red car mixed with a Navajo rug pattern throughout the outside, the border, but also it also feels like it's part of woven within the car itself. Could you tell us what drew you to pull and combine these two images together?
Yeah. So I had been creating work like this for the past couple of years, where it's really about combining two elements that are seemingly unrelated. And for this piece, I really thought about the mechanism of design, but also like the mechanism of technology and what that's like when we bring it together. There is cultural reference, and cultural reference being personal, being that I'm Dene and that I'm also Chicana. But really, I think what I'm interested in here is what happens when we combine those two ideas together and what new ideas form out of that combination. And the other side of it is seeing the relationship that occurs between both of these images once they are combined. This started off as a drawing, of course, and I don't typically use I don't use any Photoshop, and so I kind of don't understand that relationship of combination until it actually happens. And for me, that's always very interesting, because I think at that moment we can really see the similarities in mathematics and aesthetics that is occurring naturally from two things that are really unrelated. And for me, that's an interesting position of the piece to create itself. So in some ways, I do think that this is a cultural piece, but more so it's about the combination of ideas.
So because you didn't use Photoshop, and knowing that, and can you talk about, because I walked into the studio several times and just saw the many layers and the process. So while you're in it and you're weaving this literally, the rubylith, can you talk about maybe what that process for you, how that process came for you as you're actually literally cutting the rubylith and forming it sort of like a puzzle?
Yeah, it was very intense, very tedious, but kind of the work I like to do. Definitely a lot of long hours, but I really appreciated the process also adding to the content of the work. I thought that was really interesting that, even in itself and in its creation, that it was formed in putting these layers together. And each time we did another layer, you start to kind of see the whole piece becoming revealed. And to me, that was really interesting. I think thinking of ideas, thinking of culture, thinking of presence, thinking of the combination of things coming together and revealing new realities is really what I'm most interested in as an artist. And to see that happen.
Just very quickly, Lulu, can you change the slide so we can see a more close-up? Thank you. Go ahead, Nani.
Yeah, to see that be revealed in the process was also very gratifying, and I think it's what I'm most interested in as an artist. But yeah, it was definitely a challenge, and an exercise in problem solving, I guess I want to say.
Yeah.
I really felt with Dewey and Gabrielle, we like came up with a new language as we were like talking about how to figure out this piece and how to figure out the transitions of colors, because that's something also very indicative of my work, that I do want it to look like a weaving. I do want it to look like they're joined, but also can stand alone, but that there is this kind of integration between each of the elements. And for me, it was just really, really beautiful to see it all come together, and also for there just to be an element of surprise at the end of the final product.
No, it's a beautiful work. Thank you, Nani. And Star, so you're when I look at your print from afar and this like haze that kind of covers over East LA, it really has this romantic homage to East LA, the East LA landscape. This image is from a photograph that you found challenging to take. And I heard you say that you became somewhat obsessed with this view. Can you talk about what intrigued you so much about the specific site and what made that last photograph you took the perfect take? There you go.
So, well, I've just always been really interested in kind of dreamlike landscapes from up top. So I grew up in Boyle Heights and more of the more like flat land, not so right where City Terrace, there's more hills, even in East LA. I always really like to escape to where the hilltops were and to kind of escape from the madness of the city. And so a lot of my friends and me, we would like to get onto fire escapes and to different parts to kind of get away from like the hecticness of the streets. So I've always just been kind of obsessed with photographing like the view of what was going on in the city. And so the more I kind of learned to master photography, and I'm like always learning, but like, you know, you learn like, oh, okay, like the first landscape I took of like Cesar Chavez and Soto, I remember I tried to get like, say, like this type of view because I would see it, I would be able to see all the way past like downtown, but I wouldn't be able to actually represent it in a picture, even though visually I could see it, because I was just using a throwaway. And then I remember I got a little bit of a better camera, and then it was too late. They had already ruined the view with like some apartment buildings that they had put up. And so I would go to different places and photograph it. And I realized that a 35 millimeter wouldn't be able to capture it. And so I remember when I came up here to City Terrace, because my family, when they came here in 1945, we actually our original house is not too far. It's like on the cusp of Boyle Heights and City Terrace. It would like kind of look like that when we look out. And so this kind of view just reminds me of all those moments when you can kind of take a meditative breath and look at something where you're kind of removed from everything. And, you know, it's like kind of a visual that so many people can see, but maybe say they can't replicate. And it took me so long. So not even just the 4 years. It was really from the beginning of my career that I had been trying to take something like this. And I think I'm kind of always doing that with my landscapes. So like this image is just something I've always been thinking about in terms of photography, is like these moments that you can kind of actually relax, like, you know, from the hecticness.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful view, and when you see the print in person, what's also very magical about it is the different levels of distance and perspective, and then how the sky just fades away without any kind of barrier at the top. Mm-hmm. So it's it's a very romantic view of the city. And there's a lot of oranges in the work. I think you took this in the winter time, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like maybe late fall or winter. It was definitely during a time when there wasn't too much harsh sun and it's overcast, because I had taken this picture in the summer, and then it would be too reflective. And so there's different times when I would take it. And so there's a lot of green and there's a lot of blue, and there's some oranges. And the only reason I know that is because we're replicating it for a mural, and we know like the colors because of what they're replicating it, and like we know that there's green, we know there's blue and orange because of like what's coming out prominent in the mural. But yeah, I definitely have it in different versions of it. I have it like 35 millimeter and in the summer, and it just, yeah, you wouldn't be able to see half of it. It just kind of gets blown out, kind of like how I am right now, you know. So yeah, it's, you know, I enjoy it though. I enjoy when the sun gives me a little bit of a headache. Like, I mean, I enjoy it, you know. It doesn't bother me, but you know, it's like also like, you know, you can't see it all, and that's the thing is like, you know, when you're growing up and you want to be a dreamer, that's the thing is you want to see the vastness of everything.
Mm-hmm. I think the first time I witnessed like just a clear sky are like Sunday mornings, and you can see such a far distance. So it's really great. Thank you, Star.
Mm-hmm.
And we can switch change. Thank you. So we have here Irena's Oración and Yaneli. Yaneli's the Chicana Codex. Irene, for those who are familiar with your work and your artistic trajectory, the topics in your work and the symbols you've incorporated, and now looking at Yaneli's work, it's difficult not to see the links and similarities between the work. Activism, social justice, and cultural identity, as well as feminism, are topics frequently in your addressed in actually both of your works. So I'm going to begin with Yaneli. So we can change the slide, Lulu. So you're a printmaker, but this is your first serigraph. Although this isn't your first self-portrait. Can you begin by sharing what some of the symbols surrounding your portrait represent? And also, do you think that this period of somewhat forced isolation encouraged you to address this topic for your print?
Yes, so I usually try to focus on personal experiences, or it might be based on like what I read, maybe based on music or current events. And so I have read Gloria Anzaldua's work before, and this was during my undergrad years. And so initially I wanted to create something related to one of her chapters in Borderlands. And she talks about Lili Tlapali, which translates to black and red ink. And so I wanted to use those two colors. But as I was working on this print, I wanted to incorporate, you know, more color. And I actually recently bought her other book, which is called Light in the Dark. And so I skimmed through it, but prior to this, I had read one of her chapters, and she talks about Coyolxauhqui, on how she is broken into pieces. And there's a quote, which I can't remember right now, but she talks about how there's, when we look at Coyolxauhqui's statue, the round one, I don't know if you guys have seen it, you can see her in fragments. And so that's something that I wanted to incorporate in my print. And you can see that around my portrait. And so I'm just gonna briefly talk about a few of these that I included. I'd like to first start off with the top in the middle section. The reason why I included these two black dots and the skull is in reference to my artist name, Omequistli. Omequistli translates to double death. It can also mean rebirth, life and death. and also changes and transitions. And so that's something that I carry with me, and I feel like it really resonates with who I am. And on the left and right corner on the top, I have SC, which means South Central. The one on the right, LA, so it's referencing my community. And I always try to include it in any possible way. I'll also briefly talk about the the fifth icon on the left column. That's referencing Gloria Anzaldua's book, Borderlands. I read it
The
maybe
one about the
times.
cactus.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. So I read it a few times, and I just wanted to commemorate her. And I feel like in this whole piece, I am commemorating her. But specifically, I wanted to include something that a lot of scholars have read and might resonate with her work. So
Can you tell me what it is that you resonate
yes,
with
so
that work?
in Borderlands, she talks about Nepantla, and you can see it in pretty much each chapter in that book. And so she talks about living in between. And this could be maybe in between two cultures. It could be based on, your sexuality, languages that you speak, any like customs that you might practice on a day-to-day. And so I tried to include that a little bit here. You can see that maybe with like the hoop earrings, the huipil, the lipstick, eyeliner, and also like some of these symbols that I wanted to include here. I'm referencing in a way kind of like the past, but also the present. And answering your second question, as I was creating this during the pandemic and also working full time, I was also thinking about myself, my identity, and how I reflect that in my teaching and with projects that I have students create. And I feel like once my students get to know me, they have some type of connection with me. It could be based on, both of us, student and teacher, growing up in the community, maybe having like some interest in maybe reading or, art, or maybe just the Latino, Chicano, Chicanx culture. And so that kind of like forced me to, to make sure that I am able to reflect that and have a connection with the audience. And so, yeah, so that's a little bit about this print. And I want to end it with the, let's see, second to bottom on the right column. It's the circle right above the CS. So this is the icon of Il Huitl. Il Huitl translates to Día Completo, the complete day. So half of it is a moon, the other half is the sun. And so I try to, tie it back with, the two dots on the top. Ome translates to two, double, guate. And so in a sense, it's kind of like going back into a full circle to duality. And so it goes back again to Nepantla, in between these two, things, cultures, languages, you name it. And so, yeah, so I wanted to, just tell my audience a little bit about who I am. And I hope that, people can resonate with my work and maybe, start the conversation of identity.
Thank you, Yaneli. And we can change the slide. And speaking of Nepantla, Irena.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I of course, I really appreciated your presentation, Yaneli, and all the women. I have been working with a Mesoamerican symbolism and mythologies and cosmology for most of my artistic career. What really drew me to wanting to know more about this ancient knowledge that I consider to be timeless knowledge was the fact that the feminine was really honored in most of the cultures, the Mesoamerican cultures, and still is today. And so I also think of that spirituality as a decolonizing spirituality. Maybe people didn't use that term 30 years ago, but a decolonizing spirituality is always for me a spirituality of resistance. And so, so I have really, I felt it really important for me to be able to understand the cosmology and the meanings in a deeper way. So throughout my work, what I try to do is take some of that knowledge and symbolism and connect it to contemporary Chicana reality. So this particular piece, I'll just speak briefly about it, but I originally, this was a piece that was done for a project called I Speak that was organized by artists Joseph Beckles and Jane Castillo in 2001. And so if you see the image on the right-hand side, that's it was an original painting that was done in monochromatic colors. And it was a project that essentially became like a time capsule. So I only saw it one time. It was exhibited once and I never saw it again, but I always had really thought it had a strong graphic quality about it. Had wanted to see maybe at some point if I could translate that into some form of printmaking. And so this was a really wonderful opportunity to do that. But the piece itself, again, it was done in 2001. It was during the time that the US was bombing Iraq. And so it was really a prayer, for peace. So you can see it says queremos la paz and oración. And so it's what I do in my work is it's a layering of different Mesoamerican cultures. Like there's the eyes at the top and on the bottom on both pieces are inspired by some of the frescoes from Teotihuacan. The hands, when you see some of those Mayan glyphs and mudras, the hand gestures are always so graceful, but many times they actually represent something. So this was a gesture of meditation and prayer. Of course, the speech glyph where you see oración is, the idea of speaking and communicating and expressing. Yaneli was speaking of Koyoshauki and Koyoshauki, Gloria Saldua and both Cherie Moraga really honor, the idea of Koyoshauki and how she may have been, broken in pieces, but as Cherie Moraga says, Chicana artists put her back together again. We remember her when we create our art. And so the glyphs on the cheeks in the sky, those are the bells of Koyoshauki, the moon goddess. And so it's a very straightforward piece. It's really just about prayer and meditation. And of course, the birds and the butterflies represent the spirit and the soul. Once we pass from this realm, our spirit leaves our body and in the form of butterflies and is transformed into butterflies or birds. And so that was just the inspiration behind the piece. And so translating it into a serigraph was really interesting. I wanted to, use, of course, the idea and the composition, but I also wanted it to translate differently in terms of the colors. And so I really also want to thank Dewey and Gabriela for their help in terms of, just suggesting certain things. I have printed, I think it's 10 serigraphs with this serigraph at Self Help Graphics over the years. But I had not printed a silkscreen or a serigraph for 15 years. So this was really an interesting process again for me to kind of jump into it. So I really was happy to have the opportunity. So I found different challenges, in terms of how things were working and how things were not working. But eventually, I think it was able, it came together. And we also Dewey suggested we try a little sparkle. So there's a little bit of glitter for the turquoises, just to kind of give emphasis to, to the prayer as well. And so that's basically, it's very straightforward, but that's basically it's a prayer. And of course, you talked about this whole period of time, and there have been so many levels of transformation, transition, grief, painful moments, and hopefully coming out of that. And so paz y justicia just seemed appropriate for the moment. And of course, besides the social kinds of upheavals that we have been experiencing, just the personal kind of day-to-day challenges that we have as well. And so it was really a prayer, and a meditation on all of those things.
It's timeless, Irena, as all of the work that you've created, and it continues to resonate. The topics and the themes within your work continue to resonate. They're timeless. I'm going to bring Dewey on, but I also like Lulu, if we can invite Gabby as well.
Great.
Is she on with us?
I know she was on the YouTube watching it.
I thought she was going to be joining us. Well, it was going to be, I hope she joins us, but these are images of works in process or in the studio. So in addition to the Maestrxs Atelier, we also had another atelier that, which we've met with the artist before, with the military veteran artist. And I think, Dewey, it's important to talk about how you prepared, improvised, adjusted, and the back and forth dialogue you had with each artist, especially like from the first conversation we had in 2020, at the end of 2020, and then, or I can't even remember, like the beginning of 2020, till when we started printing. And I'd like for everyone also to chime in about how you prepared and how, exactly how you improvised and how that moved along, and how, like, your biggest challenges on top of the fact that, I think one of the biggest things that we both noticed, Dewey, is that how busy also each artist was. So maybe you can share.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say, it's been such an honor to to be able to work with y'all and publish like your great prints. I mean, they have so much meaning. So yes, definitely. In whatever way we worked, whether it was virtually or in person, I'm super grateful for you all and all your work. And yeah, oh my God, Maestrxs are really busy. So I think one of the biggest challenges was just trying to connect with y'all and stay in connection, whether it was virtually or in person. Going back to like the first calls or to the first like time hearing about it, which was before the pandemic. And then, the pandemic, everybody went into like survival mode. So it was kind of like, hey, what happened? And I even remember like talking to Rosalie with our first print, and she was like, oh my God, are we still gonna do this stuff? Like, does anybody even remember? So yeah, I'm really glad that we all got, back on track to make these. They're super important and they're super awesome. But communication has been key, and I think phones and emails and calling and talking in person, whether it's, going over ideas or scheming on ways how to make something, has been a challenge for each person. Excuse me. So yeah, I think we just finished with Irena. So working with Irena is such a pleasure. And I think the challenge was just getting on track with schedule. And that's kind of with everybody, because everybody was all on a different schedule, lots of y'all have to work. I have to work, or you're not in the state, or you're out of state, or y'all have lots of stuff going on. So we're just kind of like pinpointing that, getting together, talking, and figuring out how we're going to do it, and then going ahead and then making it happen. Yeah, it's been great.
Hello, if you can stop sharing your screen so we can all be on the.
We're on the group chat. And then Gabby, oh my God, she's on there somewhere. I see her. I just want to give Gabby a shout. I want to give Gabby a shout out for just like all the great help, and definitely knowing what I need when I need it. So like, definitely thank you, Gabby, for all the great help. I really appreciate it. We've worked together.
I think, hopefully she comes on. She's still connecting on the audio. I'd like for everyone to chime in, and also like Dewey, this is also includes you. Like from the initial invitation, you had an idea of the work for the print in mind, and then when you look at the final work that you created, did it change dramatically, or are there a few changes to it? I mean, I think, Irena, you already had that concept of recreating the oración before, but and I think, Gabriela, you shared with me like that you shared with the group that you just didn't feel inspired, and then the time came when you had to be in the studio. Nani too, that shared that with me. So can you tell us about your process of, did it change dramatically, or your final print? Anyone?
I just want to, I want to hear from these ladies too, but I just want to I'm going back and I'm remembering the meetings that we had with Irena, Marvella, and I on doing this. And we talked about the experience of being in the studio and making positives, and what that's like, and how different it is to be creating in the studio and versus sending in an image and having it broken down, and how, if that is even going to be possible during COVID and during this weird time in the print shop, and how much it was a part of the self-help experience to work with a master printer and really get a grasp on what it is to layer colors on top of each other, and then print a like kind. Dewey printed an edition, I gotta say, of 65 for every artist that's here right now. And it's a lot of work that he's been doing for years now. And that expertise and that knowledge is something that all of us got to kind of work with and learn from. And then we grow through seeing our work being produced in that way. So whether you're familiar with screen printing or not, that collaboration with the printer is, I think, one of the biggest gems that self-help gives, that you don't really get in any other way unless you get invited again somewhere else to go make an edition somewhere. And that doesn't happen all that often, or that opportunity doesn't happen all that often. So I go ahead, folks, whatever your changes were, and share your experiences on what it was like to print in the studio.
Yeah, but
I wanted to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dewey. Go ahead, Dewey.
I was just definitely, that's the whole essence of the atelier, right? Is the collaboration, experimentation, and kind of going through the whole process. And Rosalie, I know you're a printmaker, but I'm sad that you weren't there with us to go through the whole process with us. Next time, friend.
For sure.
I just wanted to say, I think, to just kind of, emphasize what Rosalie was saying, especially how important the master printer is. And Dewey, I think we talked about this, and I think one of the things that really was so helpful is the fact that you're also an artist, and you bring that sensibility to the work. And so you're able to, of course, deal with it on the technical level, but you bring that sensibility in terms of being able to, to interact with the artists, the other artists, and, think about things and brainstorm. And that's really a wonderful quality. So I really thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you, Irena. That's what gets me in trouble too, because as an artist, I'm like, yes, let's do more layers. Well, let's add more things. As a printer, I'm like, oh my God, I wish we would have just done one color.
Yeah. And also shout out to Gabby. Gabby's great. She's so helpful, such a, really humble, and that also just right on it. So thank you, Gabby. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, she's great with color, man. She's
Mhm.
yeah, fantastic with color. Well,
I could say something. I had been to self-help several times. I even worked through a program that was at self-help, the CAP program. So I was really excited. So thank you, Rosalie, for inviting me to be part of this, to finally print at self-help. But being there actually, I think, made it all the better. There's like little things that I think you miss when you're just like sending some files over. And when you're there, Dewey and Gabby are there workshopping with you. I again did some tracing and tried to create texture with different types of pencils and markers and graphite. But just being there and just scratching the actual thing itself, which was like a tip that Dewey gave me, it was great. And I wouldn't have received that if I wasn't there. So if anybody else gets a chance to do this, I'll highly recommend that you go in person, because it was really great.
Irena.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Please,
Oh, I was just gonna say on my print too, like Dewey actually has a little spot highlight on mine, the butterfly. I had done it on with a spray can. I had like spray painted the silhouette of this butterfly that I wanted to have on top of the print as a last layer, but I had done it in color, and so it needed to be in black ink. And so I was like, how do I do it with this ink, Dewey? And so he showed me a technique with the toothbrush to get it with the same splatter. That was really cool, and I loved, and he showed me like a few things. But then I was like, for the final one, can you do that though? Because yours looks better. So his is like a little spot up there. And I wanted Gabby to have her little initials somewhere too, but she snuck out of it.
Yeah, it was really fun, like to share like hand done inking techniques, especially with your print, because a lot of it was digital. And then any chance I get, I always want to print over something. So definitely, thinking of hand done stuff over digital, just to give it texture and then just to give it like a different like kind of like look on it, definitely. And printing outside of the border is really great too. I love anything outside of borders.
Well, Stars doesn't have one.
SARS was also, I mean, it's a great print. CMYK is super technical. So for me, I think I was trying to get like those straight borders so that any magenta or cyan or yellow doesn't stick out. So I think that was a challenge. CMYK is always super amazing to me as well, because it just comes out so like magically into like a photo, and it's like, oh my God, it actually looks like the photo. And just kind of like toning down the colors and the magentas, you can see it all on there. So it's a really great print.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's so technical. It's such a square. There's no outside, and you even tried to encourage me to put things on top. I was like, no.
Always.
I know exactly what I want. I don't want anything on top of it. I want exactly a replica of it. So I mean, I appreciated that. But for this thing, since I had did silk screening before, which was only black and white, I was like, I just want a CMYK. I finally want to get a CMYK. So, but yeah, I appreciated that though, because it's like finally I get it, like 7 years later.
Well, thank you everyone for the beautiful work that you all created, and Dewey, obviously, with your support and all your talent and labor behind and guidance, and obviously Irena and Rosalie for, curating such a beautiful atelier. And I always tell Betty that I feel very lucky to be able to have conversations with Irena, but also to be able to find those bridges like the atelier to connect younger people who haven't been to self-help graphics or just new, or have been connected self-help to self-help graphics, but through different programs like QID and the CAP program. So it's really, really great I feel very privileged to be in the position that I am, and hope to continue doing more with all of you again. And I really hope that maybe at the end of this year or early next year, we can celebrate in person together, because we haven't had that opportunity. And I want to invite the audience to go and see the works. You can reserve, make an RSVP to come and see the prints. They're installed in the gallery. And on June 19th, we will, which is a Saturday, we'll be reopening again the gallery, so people can make an RSVP and come and see the show or the prints, but they're installed right now. And so please make a reservation so you can come and see the prints.
Could I say one last thing, Marvella? I just wanted to thank you so much for being such a wonderful coordinator and, bringing everything together. And I just want to give a last shout out to Rosalie for all the amazing expertise that you bring as a printer yourself. I think that was incredibly helpful to many of us in the atelier. So thank you for your expertise and for sharing it.
So you can see the prints on SHG on selfhelpgraphics.com at our shop. Dewey, you want to
say y'all did it, like awesome. Like,
yeah. This is the first women's atelier for how long? It's been some years, right? So
I think it was 2000. I just saw the atelier today as we were photographing it. The fourth, and I think it was 2008.
Yeah, we're talking almost. Yeah, that's over a decade.
Yeah,
so
over a decade.
Kind of a big epic thing. Thanks to Self-Help for putting this on and for just kind of having me be a part of this. I'm thankful to be collaborating again with you guys in another way.
Well, thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Have a great night.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Bye, everybody.